Lightning flashed across the sky. On the golden battle stage, as the lightning dispersed, a familiar figure slowly appeared under the stunned gazes of countless onlookers. As they clearly saw the face of this figure, their pupils shrank sharply. Some people couldn't help but blink, their expressions filled with horror, as if they had seen a ghost. That is, Chen. Wasn't he trapped inside the mirror of judgment? How did he get out? How is that possible? Did he break free from the mirror of judgment's restraints? This is terrifying. A massive uproar erupted, filling the air. Almost everyone had their eyes wide open, their faces full of disbelief. Clearly, this scene shocked them just as much as the previous revelation when Ji Xuan unleashed the Supreme Sea. The many students from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy were also stunned by this scene. But soon, as they regained their composure, expressions of wild joy appeared in their eyes, and deafening cheers rang out like thunder. Woo, Brother Mu is back. Haha. As expected of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's heaven-ranking overlord. Brother Mu, take down those two jerks. All the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy were visibly excited. Although Luo Li also possessed incredible strength, she had always kept a low profile within the academy. Chen, on the other hand, had always moved forward without hesitation. At an astonishing pace, he had become the most dazzling new star of the academy. With each victory, he began to earn the respect of everyone in the academy. Even when he took over the position of the heaven-ranking overlord from Xun'er, no one felt resentment because they all knew he deserved the position. Without realizing it, Chen had become a symbol of Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy in the hearts of many students. He represented a kind of belief. So, when they saw Chen appear once more, the excitement in their hearts couldn't be hidden. This guy, Xun'er, gazed at the tall figure standing on the golden battle stage, her beautiful eyes shining. She bit her red lips, her small hands tightly clenched in excitement. Brother Mu really showed up. I knew it. He would never disappoint us. Yushi's pretty face was filled with admiration. Yi Qingling also quietly let out a sigh of relief. She looked around at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy students who were suddenly bursting with a tremendous spirit. The previously despondent students now seemed infused with boundless confidence, their faces full of fervor. It was as if they had always believed that Chen's appearance could turn the tide of battle. Ever since Chen entered the academy, he had never once let them down. The young man had a charm that made people believe in him instinctively, a charm born from his self-confidence. No matter how powerful the enemy, he had never backed down, his fighting spirit always burning bright. Coming out and acting all cool, saving the day, really, Ling, she smiled lightly. Her tense body gradually relaxed, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Chen's performance hadn't let her down after all. Amid the widespread uproar, Chen lowered his head and glanced at the two women in his arms. Are you two all right? Luo Li's beautiful eyes glistened with joy as she looked at the familiar face, a light smile appearing on her lips. She then shook her head. When Xingxian, upon seeing Chen's face, froze for a moment, then was startled back to reality by the loud cheering around them. Only then did she realize that Chen's arm was still around her waist. Her flawless face immediately turned bright red, and she quickly pulled away from his embrace, glaring at him. You're trying to take advantage of me? Chen looked at the fiery-eyed girl helplessly. This was a matter of necessity. I was just saving you, all right. Humph. Must be nice having two girls around, huh? When Xingxian wasn't buying it, snorting. And you let two girls fight for so long. Your manners are terrible. Chen scratched his head and lifted his gaze to the sky, where Ji Xuan hovered in midair. A cold gleam flashed in his black eyes. He then smiled and said, Sorry about that. Can you do it? When Xingxian asked, her eyes full of doubt. However, within the depths of her phoenix-like eyes, there was a trace of concern. That guy has already opened up the Supreme Sea. While he may not be a true supreme powerhouse yet, he definitely isn't someone we can contend with. I'll help you, Luo Li said softly, her voice calm. Although he's opened up the Supreme Sea, if it comes down to a fight, I don't think I would lose to him. Chen smiled lightly, shaking his head. I've been waiting for this battle for a long time. Luo Li fell silent, then said nothing more, because she knew that this battle truly belonged to Chen. Be careful. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian exchanged a glance, then slowly retreated, their cold gazes locking onto Shui Tianhe, who had been severely injured by Mu Chen's punch and was now embedded in the battle stage. Shui Tianhe had completely lost his ability to fight, but clearly, both women harbored great disdain for his previous despicable tactics, and they would not let him off easily now. Mu Chen, however, did not spare Shui Tianhe another glance. His body slowly rose into the air, eventually standing tall, floating before Ji Xuan, facing him head-on. Ji Xuan's cold gaze had been fixed on Mu Chen ever since he appeared. The cold light and killing intent within his eyes intertwined, forming a sinister smile. He tilted his head, staring at Mu Chen. "I never expected you to actually break through. You've really surprised me." "Your surprise is only just beginning," Mu Chen replied with a smile, but there was little warmth in his expression. His eyes, too, reflected a sharp killing intent. He could sense Luo Li's spiritual energy was slightly disturbed, clearly from the injuries she had sustained while fighting Ji Xuan earlier. Ji Xuan shook his head slightly. "But it doesn't matter. The fact that you made it out, that aligns with my intentions. I wonder, if I were to completely defeat you here, would those students from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy still trust and admire you the way they do now?" He had clearly noticed the spark of hope in the eyes of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's students when Mu Chen appeared. If he truly defeated Mu Chen now, those bright eyes that would fade away afterward would give him a twisted sense of satisfaction. Mu Chen smiled, saying nothing more. His hands slowly clenched, and an immense wave of spiritual power erupted around him like a volcanic eruption. Boom, boom. A powerful surge of spiritual energy radiated from Mu Chen, far more intense than before. Oh, triple divine soul tribulation. Ji Xuan sensed the fluctuation of spiritual energy and raised an eyebrow, a mocking smile curling on his lips. "It seems you've gained quite a bit from the Mirror of Judgment." Before entering the Mirror of Judgment, Mu Chen's strength was only at the first-level Divine Soul Tribulation, but now, his power had reached the third-level Divine Soul Tribulation. Clearly, he had passed through 2 tribulations within the Mirror of Judgment. However, this level of spiritual energy holds no threat to me now, Ji Xuan said with a smile, his expression suddenly turning icy. He flicked his finger through the air, and a massive beam of holy light shot out from the Supreme Sea behind him, as if it had become a solid form, cutting through space and shooting toward Mu Chen. With that casual flick, the spiritual energy he unleashed was far beyond that of a third-level Divine Soul Tribulation expert. Boom. However, when the holy light, infused with immense spiritual power, surged toward him, Mu Chen's expression remained calm. His body erupted with brilliant, thunderous light, wrapping around him like thunder paste, and swiftly merging with his body. Crackle! The thunder flickered, and Mu Chen's skin turned radiant like silver. Thunder streaks appeared one after another across his chest. 1, 5, 7, 8, 9. Mu Chen's thunder god body had reached the strength of a 9-rune thunder body. When the 9th thunder rune manifested, Mu Chen's pitch-black eyes turned as though forged from thunder itself, filled with crackling lightning, like a realm of thunder. He stepped forward, and then punched out in a smooth arc. His punch appeared slow, but in an instant, it crashed into the tangible saint light, followed by a burst of thunder, striking with an overwhelming force that shattered the saint light into pieces. To think you would try to resist a supreme with just your physical strength? Truly a fool's dream. Ji Xuan's eyes narrowed as he saw Mu Chen, his body surrounded by thunder, and he sneered. He could sense that Mu Chen's body had grown incredibly strong, but if he thought that alone could challenge him, then Mu Chen was being terribly naive. Are you really a supreme powerhouse? Mu Chen smiled, gazing at the vast, endless supreme sea behind Ji Xuan. His lips curled into a slight smirk as he slowly spoke. Isn't it just an imperfect supreme sea? You think you alone possess it. Upon hearing Mu Chen's words, Ji Xuan's pupils immediately constricted. In the sky, Ji Xuan glared at Mu Chen, his eyes cold as thunder crackled around him. His gaze sharpened as if reading a book, but at Mu Chen's words, his pupils involuntarily shrank. Yet, his lips curled into a mocking smile. Oh, is that so? Clearly, He did not believe that Chen could possess a supreme sea. After all, no matter how many fortuitous encounters he had, it was impossible for him to have reached the level of opening the supreme sea in less than an hour, jumping from the first divine soul tribulation. However, despite Ji Xuan's mocking sneer, Chen said nothing more. He merely smiled slightly, and then his face gradually took on a frosty curve. His eyes, filled with thunder, grew even colder, and at that moment, his hands suddenly formed seals. Whoosh! A scarlet light pillar shot up from Chen's heavenly spirit, piercing the sky. At the same time, a terrifying aura of slaughter filled the air, as if an ancient beast was about to emerge from the depths of the earth. Everyone looked up at this scene. Within the red light pillar, a massive demon pillar stood silently, its surface weathered with marks of time. Some of the vicious scars on it were unrecognizable, yet they painted a picture of the brutal, earth-shattering battles this great Xun'er demon pillar had endured in ancient times. On the demon pillar, strange patterns resembling chains could be faintly seen, entwining the pillar's surface. It seemed as if they were restraining the great Xun'er demon pillar. These patterns, of course, were seals set by Chen using the mysterious page of immortality hidden within his body. After all, the great Xun'er demon pillar exuded too much malevolent energy. In the past, Chen would never have been able to control it, so he had to seal it. However, the time to lift that seal had finally arrived. Chen's eyes gleamed coldly, and his figure shifted, appearing directly in front of the great Xun'er demon pillar. With a single hand, he formed a seal and pressed it against the pillar. Buzz! A wave of energy spread from Chen's palm, and the page of immortality, hidden within his chi emitted a faint hum. Dark purple light burst forth, flowing out through his palm. Seal release. A soft voice echoed in Chen's mind. Sizzle. The dark purple light patterns on the great Xun'er demon pillar quickly dissolved. Boom. As the seal dissolved, the great Xun'er demon pillar suddenly trembled violently. The once enormous pillar began to swell uncontrollably, no longer under Chen's control. From a distance, it looked like a towering pillar reaching the heavens. The terrifying murderous aura emanating from the pillar surged wildly, causing the entire world to turn a deep red. The overwhelming malevolent energy made everyone's hearts race. Even the academy heads in the sky were slightly disturbed by this terrifying aura. Taitsong, the academy head, also stared at the scene with narrowed eyes. A look of surprise flashed across his face, and he muttered, "Is he really trying to lift the seal on the great Xun'er demon pillar? But such an ancient and evil creature can't be controlled so easily." The great Xun'er demon pillar had once been the treasure of the Dragon Demon Palace. Taitsong had some knowledge of its power. He was well aware of the devastation it could unleash. At this moment, the great Xun'er demon pillar had fallen into Chen's hands. But with his current strength, could he really control it? This kind of terrifying weapon, if it cannot be mastered, might very well backfire. Everyone in the world was staring at the sky, watching the demon pillar, which was filled with murderous energy. Chen also looked up at this massive pillar. After the seal was broken, scarlet cracks appeared on its surface. These cracks seemed like the mouths of demons, constantly spewing out an overwhelming, heart-stopping murderous force. The great Xun'er demon pillar, at this moment, had undoubtedly revealed its most terrifying side. Chen's figure moved, and he directly appeared at the top of the great Xun'er demon pillar. Boom. However, as soon as he landed, the great Xun'er demon pillar suddenly trembled. A violent, blood-red murderous force surged toward him, as if trying to sweep him away. This kind of fierce weapon was certainly not something that could be easily tamed. The great Xun'er demon pillar had an extraordinary origin, and such a powerful weapon surely had its own intelligence. In the past, when Chen sealed it, it could only remain dormant, but now that the seal was broken, it was naturally unwilling to let him control it. Humph! Facing the backlash from the great Xun'er demon pillar, Chen snorted coldly, clearly having anticipated this. He stomped his foot heavily, and dark purple light patterns quickly spread from his feet. As these light patterns spread, the terrifying murderous force instantly began to subside like a receding tide. Though the great Xun'er demon pillar was domineering and vicious, the page of immortality, inside Mu Chen's body had just the right power to counter it. After receiving Mu Chen's counterattack, the great Xun'er demon pillar finally quieted down, no longer daring to easily backfire against him. Since you're listening, then I'll borrow all your power. Mu Chen, feeling the now calm great Xun'er demon pillar, smiled and immediately sat cross-legged on top of the massive pillar. He raised both hands lightly, and the blood-red murderous energy surged upwards, forming a solid crimson pillar of light that completely enveloped Mu Chen's figure. SSS. Endless murderous energy continuously poured into Mu Chen's body, finally rushing like a fierce dragon into his chi si. After the seal was broken, the great Xun'er demon pillar was undoubtedly much more ferocious than when it was sealed. The intensity of the murderous force it emitted was far beyond anything it had shown before. The violent and vast murderous energy continued to flood into the chi si, turning the entire chi si red. Eventually, the capacity of the chi si reached its limit, and a sharp, agonizing pain quietly surged. However, despite the pain, Mu Chen remained motionless, continuing to direct the great Xun'er demon pillar to pour the murderous energy into his chi si. SSS. As the pain intensified, when the chi si could no longer contain the murderous energy due to the pressure, a subtle distortion suddenly appeared at the center of the chi si. When the distortion reached its peak, a tiny black dot materialized. This was incredibly small, emitting a peculiar wave of energy, as if it contained a strange little world inside. When the tiny black dot appeared, a terrifying suction force erupted from it. The murderous energy in the chi si immediately surged toward the dot and was completely devoured by it. In just a familiar moment, the chi si once again became empty, with no spiritual energy left. At the top of the demon pillar, Mu Chen's body trembled slightly. He then looked up at Ji Xuan, who was coldly glaring at him from the distant sky, and smiled. He stood up, slowly spreading his hands. Boom! Suddenly, the space behind Mu Chen twisted, and within that distortion, a blood-red ocean seemed to emerge. This was another vast sea of spiritual energy, but the energy in this ocean was blood-red, as if it was made of gathered blood, giving it an extremely gruesome appearance. However, the so-called gruesome look didn't seem to attract much attention. Instead, countless people watched in shock at the blood-red ocean behind Mu Chen, with some even looking horrified. The Supreme Sea. Mu Chen had actually opened the Supreme Sea. Yi Qingling and the others were also left utterly bewildered. After all, before entering the Mirror of Judgment, Mu Chen had only possessed the strength of the first-level divine soul tribulation. But now, he had suddenly crossed into the realm of the Supreme Sea, which was terrifyingly powerful. That's not the Supreme Sea Mu Chen has created. Ling Shi slightly shook her head and said softly. He has only opened a supreme origin point within his chi si and used the ferocious power of the great Xun'er demon pillar to fill it. However, these forces aren't his own, so they can't sustain themselves indefinitely. Thus, the Supreme Sea can only exist for a short time before it dissipates. But this is probably his goal. The Supreme Origin Point is the initial form of the Supreme Sea, but to form a true Supreme Sea, one needs to use their own spiritual power to perfect it. Given that Mu Chen doesn't have enough time for this, he took an alternative approach, using the power of the great Xun'er demon pillar to infuse the Supreme Origin Point, creating a pseudo-Supreme Sea. At this moment, Mu Chen didn't care whether his Supreme Sea was real or not. He just needed the power it provided. Now that he had the Supreme Sea, all of Ji Xuan's advantages were effectively nullified. With the 9-rune thunder body and the power of the Supreme Sea, Mu Chen could now be considered truly invincible beneath the Supreme Stage. The Crimson Supreme Sea surged and rolled within the distorted space. Mu Chen slowly raised his head, looking at Ji Xuan, whose expression was dark and stormy in the distance. A cold, icy smile curved at the corner of his lips, and then he stretched out his hand, gently beckoning at Ji Xuan. At this moment, the young man stood on the massive demon pillar. One of his eyes glowed crimson, while the other flashed with lightning. Black thunder wrapped around his body, creating an overwhelming pressure that spread through the air. The force was so intense that it was even stronger than Ji Xuan's current aura. Chen, at this moment, was like a god of slaughter, his killing intent freezing the atmosphere, intimidating everyone around him. Standing on the great Xun'er demon pillar, the ferocious power of the pillar swept through the world, and the overwhelming pressure that erupted in an instant caused everyone to hold their breath. All eyes turned upward, gazing at the tall, slender figure of the young man. His handsome face, now marked with sharpness and coldness, was framed by his crimson and thunderous eyes. His gaze calmly met Ji Xuan's darkened expression in the distance, and he spoke in a calm voice. "The battle that had no conclusion back then, let's settle it now." Ji Xuan's eyes were gloomy as he slowly spoke. "It seems that I was too hasty inside the mirror of judgment, inadvertently giving you a great opportunity." From the current situation, it was obvious that Chen had gained tremendous fortune when trapped in the vortex of spiritual energy. This had allowed him to make a leap in strength, advancing directly to the third-level divine soul tribulation, and even opening the Supreme Sea, reaching the same level as Ji Xuan. Chen said nothing, but the coldness in his eyes grew more intense. "However, you didn't disappoint me after all. Otherwise, my caution toward you would have become a joke." Ji Xuan slowly clenched his hand, and holy light began to gather. A magnificent holy light spear appeared in his grasp, its shape unique, with wings extending from its shaft, resembling the wings of an angel. The immense and scorching holy light expanded in circles, its power overwhelming. The angelic spear. Dean Taizong's eyes narrowed slightly as he saw the powerful spear in Ji Xuan's hand. He spoke with a faint tone. "The Sacred Spirit Academy has really gone all out, even giving Ji Xuan an inferior divine artifact. Ji Xuan has performed excellently in the academy and has earned many merits, so it was only natural they bestowed this angelic spear upon him," Dean Tiansheng of the Sacred Spirit Academy said with a slight smile. "But while the angelic spear is powerful, it still pales in comparison to Chen's demon pillar. It seems that Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy must have put in quite a bit of effort. Clearly, he didn't believe that Chen had obtained the great Xun'er demon pillar through his own efforts. He thought it was a gift from Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy." Dean Taizong sneered, but didn't bother to explain. His gaze turned back to the two figures confronting each other in the sky, where the atmosphere had become increasingly tense. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sky, their expressions growing fervent with anticipation. The two in front of them were likely standing at the peak of the younger generation of their spiritual academies. Their confrontation would undoubtedly be the championship battle, the most dazzling fight in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition. In the convergence of countless gazes, Ji Xuan gripped his spear tightly, his palm growing even firmer. In the next instant, his gaze turned chillingly cold, and his body trembled. He then vanished into thin air. Boom. However, just as he disappeared, Chen didn't hesitate for a moment and launched a punch, striking directly at the void in front of him. Boom. Black thunderbolts surged wildly, vast spiritual energy coalescing with the lightning, roaring out like an enraged dragon, carrying a terrifying force capable of severely wounding a powerhouse who had undergone the triple divine soul tribulation. In the void, a sharp and unmatched spear suddenly tore through, divine light swirling. The dominance and searing heat caused the space to twist slightly. The spear passed through, and its sharp tip, faster than lightning, collided head-on with the fist surrounded by lightning. Clang! The sound of golden iron rang out. A powerful gust of wind swept from the point of impact between the fist and spear, with visible ripples expanding in waves. Chen stood motionless. He looked ahead, where the void was slightly distorted. Ji Xuan's figure was still hidden, only the spear seemed to have pierced through space. "Is this futile probing still meaningful?" Chen asked expressionlessly. He then punched out fiercely, his fist like thunder striking across the sky, moving at an indescribable speed, crashing into the void. Boom! In the void, the thunder exploded, and a figure was sent flying backward, stepping through the air with 10 or more steps before finally stabilizing. The figure, holding the spear and with a gloomy expression, was none other than Ji Xuan. Humph! Ji Xuan's gaze was cold, and a disdainful grunt escaped his lips. But his eyes finally turned completely serious. He abruptly formed hand seals, and behind him, the twisted space was filled with a burst of brilliant divine light from the Supreme Sea. The Supreme Sea roared as countless beams of holy light shot out. Holy light technique, angelic legion. With Ji Xuan's cold command, the holy light began to coalesce, eventually transforming into hundreds or even thousands of holy light figures. Their faces were indistinct, but each had a pair of glowing wings flapping behind them. Powerful spiritual energy emanated from their bodies, waves of aura more than capable of matching even those who had passed the divine soul tribulation. Around the golden battle stage, countless students were amazed. Ji Xuan truly lived up to his reputation, having mastered such a profound divine technique. It was like turning beings into soldiers. This single move revealed the gap between the supreme stage and the divine soul tribulation. This was not something that could be bridged by any ordinary means. If Chen hadn't also opened his Supreme Sea at that moment, it was unlikely he would have been able to compete with Ji Xuan. Kill! Ji Xuan's eyes were cold as he shook the spear in his hand. Immediately, the holy light figures let out a roar and formed an array, surrounding Chen within. Swish! Swish! The holy light angels, tightly gripping their holy light spears, charged directly at Chen. Get out of my way! Chen's gaze was equally icy. He stamped his foot, and from within his crimson Supreme Sea, countless scarlet beams of light shot out, smashing toward the holy light angels. However, just as the two forces were about to collide, Ji Xuan's lips curled into a sinister smile. He changed his hand seals. Angel's funeral. Boom, boom, boom. The earth-shattering explosions rang out, and the holy light angels suddenly self-destructed, immediately forming a terrifying holy light storm that engulfed Chen in an instant. The storm was roughly 1,000 meters in diameter, and the golden battle stage below was shattered by large cracks. Such a terrifying display made countless onlookers pale. A battle of this scale was extremely rare in the past Spiritual Academy Grand Competitions. The holy light storm rampaged, and everyone watched closely. With such a dreadful attack, even Chen must have been struggling, right? The holy light storm gradually weakened. One by one, gasps of shock rang out, and Ji Xuan's pupils slightly constricted as he gazed up. At this moment, his upper body clothes were shattered by the shockwave, and thunder paste slowly flowed across his skin. 9 thunder runes flickered with faint light on his chest, and the sound of thunder continuously emanated from within him. Apart from his clothes being torn apart, Chen's body showed no signs of injury, as if Ji Xuan's terrifying attack had failed to harm him in any way. What a terrifying body, someone swallowed nervously, their voice trembling. In the sky, the young man stood bare-chested. His skin glowed like silver. Though his tall frame didn't seem particularly robust or majestic, that slightly frail form gave off an unshakable sense of immovability, as if it could withstand the collapse of heaven and earth. Chen's eyes now shone with dazzling brilliance. Even the powerful, murderous force within him could not suppress the violent power of the thunder. His palms slowly clenched into fists, and his thunderous gaze coldly fixed on Ji Xuan, as if he were a god looking down on ants. If your attacks are only at this level, then it's my turn. Chen's voice was calm, but it was accompanied by the sound of thunder. With each word he spoke, a thunderous boom echoed across the world, causing the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth to stir. Boom. As Chen finished speaking, suddenly, someone felt the heavens grow darker. They looked up in shock, seeing thick black thunderclouds gathering in the sky. These clouds covered a vast area of several thousand feet, and the oppressive darkness made it impossible for anyone to even dare breathe. Within those thunderclouds, silver lightning twisted like a giant dragon, releasing a terrifying aura of heaven and earth's pressure. Boom! The thunderclouds writhed, and suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning shot down from the sky, breaking through the clouds. But instead of striking Ji Xuan, it aimed directly at Chen. Boom! The overwhelming thunder struck Chen's body, but no thunderlight spilled out. Instead, all of it was absorbed into Chen's flesh. Crack, crack! The black thunder paste on his skin began to solidify bit by bit. In just a few breaths, a set of dark, grotesque-looking thunder armor formed on Mu Chen's body. Under the cover of the thunder armor, Mu Chen's body seemed to have expanded several times, transforming into a towering thunder giant. The fluctuations emanating from Mu Chen grew even more terrifying. One strike will be enough to end you. Under the black thunder armor, a pair of eyes glowing with thunder locked onto Ji Xuan. With a rumble, Mu Chen took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared above Ji Xuan like a ghost, and then he threw a punch. This punch was simple and brutal, powered purely by violent strength. At that moment, the thunder danced across the sky, and the vast power of the Supreme Sea surged from within the blood-red ocean of spiritual energy, pouring into Mu Chen's arm. The 9-rune thunder body and the Supreme Sea's power gathered, merging into that one simple punch. Boom! The punch shattered the very fabric of space. In an instant, Ji Xuan's expression changed dramatically. Even the heads of the spirit academies high above looked grim. Mu Chen's punch had already acquired the might of a true supreme-level expert. Boom! The entire world seemed to tremble. Thunder raged in the sky, and the roar of thunder echoed across the heavens. Mu Chen's long-prepared punch carried such immense force that even he hadn't anticipated its full power. It was a punch born from the perfect fusion of flesh and spirit, two powers working together in perfect harmony. The force was enough to defeat or even obliterate any opponent below the supreme stage. Faced with Mu Chen's punch, Ji Xuan's expression changed drastically, a look of terror rising in his eyes. Boom! The space shattered under Mu Chen's fist, forming fine cracks like shattered glass. The terrifyingly bright, thunder-infused fist rapidly enlarged in Ji Xuan's vision. He gritted his teeth, quickly forming a seal with both hands. From within the Supreme Sea, filled with holy light, a surge of radiant energy exploded outward, rapidly condensing into a massive holy shield in front of him. Within moments, a giant holy shield about 100 feet tall appeared. The holy shield appeared extraordinarily ancient, with holy wings extending from it, exuding an indestructible aura, as though it could withstand the world's most powerful impact. Faced with Mu Chen's nearly perfect punch, Ji Xuan could only activate his strongest defense. Boom! Just as the holy shield materialized, Mu Chen's striking fist, like a meteor, came crashing down without hesitation, landing a heavy blow on the shield. The collision was like a meteorite crashing into the ground, and for a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, an earth-shattering sound erupted, reverberating throughout the entire space. The air rippled visibly, and shockwaves swept out, affecting the surrounding area for thousands of feet, turning the entire world upside down. Thunder and holy light clashed at the point of impact, surging outward. Countless onlookers squinted their eyes, the blinding light stinging their vision, yet they refused to look away. Their gazes were fixed on the point of collision, unable to tear themselves from the spectacle. The confrontation was truly cataclysmic. Boom! Amidst the astonished gazes of the crowd, the thunder and holy light in the sky suddenly exploded, sending terrifying shockwaves in all directions. The onlookers' pupils contracted as they saw a figure sent sprawling, crashing downward, and landing squarely in the golden battle stage. Boom! The golden battle stage collapsed, a massive pit several hundred feet deep forming instantly, with large cracks spreading outward. Within just a few breaths, the once immense and unyielding stage crumbled entirely. Boulders rolled down, burying the pit in the process. Hiss! The crowd gasped in awe, clearly shocked by the devastation, as it was unheard of for any battle in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition to destroy this specially made stage. Who was knocked down? Someone murmured. Soon, however, the crowd refocused their attention on the battle. From the current situation, it was clear that the person who had fallen was in an absolute disadvantage. This top-tier battle had likely already determined its winner. Above the sky, spiritual energy still raged fiercely, and the turbulent waves continued for nearly a few minutes before gradually subsiding. The thunder and holy light eventually dissipated. Swish! All eyes turned towards the sky. The scene cleared once more, and a figure slowly materialized. The figure wore black thunder armor, but much of it had shattered, pieces of the once indestructible armor falling off. It's Mu Chen. Countless eyes widened in realization. Though the figure's face was obscured beneath the armor, that familiar silhouette made it unmistakable. From the area where Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was located, waves of excited cheers rang out, and all the Academy's disciples blushed with joy, their eyes filled with admiration as they gazed at the figure in the sky. "Big Brother Mu Chen won," Yushi exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement as she tightly gripped Su Linger's arm. "He's amazing," Su Linger nodded with a flushed face, her bright eyes gleaming with admiration. On one of the battle platforms, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian also looked up at the figure, both sighing with relief. Luo Li's eyes sparkled with joy and pride, an emotion she wouldn't have felt even if she had personally defeated Ji Xuan. Wen Qingxian, however, had a more complex expression, a mix of respect and stubborn unwillingness to accept defeat. In the sky, the heads of the various spiritual academies looked down at the scene. Their expressions were varied, but none of them spoke. The 5 academy heads remained silent, quietly watching, but only Dean Tiansheng of the Sacred Spirit Academy clenched his fist beneath his sleeve, his smile fading considerably. Amid the overwhelming sound of astonishment, the figure in the sky trembled slightly. The thunder armor began to peel away, revealing Mu Chen's form. His eyes, now dark and calm, glanced at his bloodied fist. The flesh was mangled, and Ji Xuan's final defense had been powerful enough to shock anyone. It even contained a rebound force that, if Mu Chen's body had not reached the 9-rune thunder body level, would have shattered his entire arm. He ignored the astonished murmurs around him, his gaze fixed intently on the collapsed battle stage. That punch had certainly dealt a heavy blow to Ji Xuan, but for some reason, Mu Chen felt a vague sense of unease. After the cheers of the crowd echoed for a while, they finally began to subside, and their gazes shifted back to the crumbling golden battle stage. The entire world fell into a profound silence. Mu Chen stood suspended in midair, his eyes flickering slightly. Suddenly, his hand clenched into a fist, and the great Sumidemon pillar shot up into the sky, carrying an overwhelming, murderous force. With an extreme display of power that would leave anyone in awe, it crashed down toward the collapsing golden battle stage with terrifying speed. Boom! The already crumbling battle stage was further crushed at that moment. The great Xun'er demon pillar fell mercilessly, smashing into the massive crater in the golden battle stage. Bang! Golden boulders shattered into pieces, and cracks spread rapidly. Mu Chen's decisive and ruthless move caused many to blink, their eyes twitching. It was clear he was striking at a helpless opponent. However, Mu Chen paid no attention to their thoughts. After the great Xun'er demon pillar descended, his pupils suddenly constricted. His face turned solemn, and the spiritual energy fluctuations that had been receding around him surged once more. Lightning flickered across his body. The sight of Mu Chen suddenly becoming fully armed shocked countless students. They quickly snapped back to their senses, their gazes filled with fear as they looked toward the crumbling golden battle stage. Could it be that Ji Xuan still had the strength to fight? Boom! From beneath the collapsed golden battle stage, a deep sound suddenly echoed. The great Xun'er demon pillar, standing tall within it, trembled violently. Boom! Boom! The tremors grew stronger, and soon, the great Xun'er demon pillar shook fiercely, soaring into the sky and shooting directly toward Mu Chen. Mu Chen's eyes grew cold. He tapped his toes, and his figure appeared atop the great Xun'er demon pillar. With a stomp, he steadied it, his dark eyes vigilantly staring down into the deep, pitch-black pit below. All eyes in the arena were fixed on them. Everyone held their breath, their hearts in their throats. From the bottomless dark pit, a faint purple light began to appear, gradually spreading upward. Then, the crowd saw a figure slowly floating up and gently landing on a massive boulder. As soon as the figure appeared, the entire sky seemed to fill with gasps of cold air. The figure was unmistakably Ji Xuan. However, at this moment, he was vastly different from before. His body emitted a purple glow, and mysterious, eerie purple runes appeared on his face. His eyes had turned dark purple, with pupils sharp and cold, brimming with boundless malice. Behind Ji Xuan, A pair of purple eagle wings unfolded, flapping slowly. The surrounding space seemed to distort subtly. Ji Xuan wore a detached expression as he crossed his arms and gazed upward at Mu Chen. His eyes held a cold indifference, as if looking down on an insect. Mu Chen's pupils narrowed as he stared at Ji Xuan. The current Ji Xuan felt completely unfamiliar to him. This was someone entirely different from the Ji Xuan he knew. Moreover, Mu Chen could sense a dangerous aura emanating from Ji Xuan, a sense so sharp that it caused his skin to prickle. It felt almost lethal. When Qing Xian and Luo Li, too, exchanged glances, their faces slightly changing as they also felt something was off. In the sky, the deans of the spiritual academies couldn't help but react. Their gazes flickered in confusion as they watched Ji Xuan. Aside from Dean Tiansheng, the other 4 academy heads, including Dean Taizong, also exchanged uneasy looks. Something's wrong with this Ji Xuan, Lingxi remarked seriously, her eyes fixed on Ji Xuan. Sister Lingxi, what's happened to him? He suddenly feels terrifying, Xun'er asked nervously. Her sensitivity to energy allowed her to feel that Ji Xuan was much more terrifying now than before. Lingxi didn't answer, her cold eyes still locked on Ji Xuan. Amid the widespread attention, Ji Xuan's lips slowly curled into a sinister smile. He then gently stamped his foot, and a ripple of energy spread outward. Everyone gasped in shock as the golden battle stage was instantly reduced to dust. Screech. A sharp, ancient eagle's cry echoed through the air, causing the eardrums of countless people to ache. Then, everyone saw a massive purple eagle, around 1,000 feet in size, slowly materializing behind Ji Xuan. Countless eyes filled with fear at that moment, for they could sense that the ancient giant eagle appearing behind Ji Xuan was not a mere illusion, but the true, physical body. What Ji Xuan possessed was not just the so-called essence of the ancient sky dragon eagle, but its actual, real form. Tonight at 8 p.m., on the main platform's YY Voice Channel 1744, there will be a Dragon Boat Festival celebration and childhood memories event. If you're free, you can join in and have some fun. You might even get a signed physical book as a surprise.